number 3 overall pick in the 2018 draft. Carolina didn't make either of those picks, but now has both quarterbacks. A tweet from the Carolina Panthers shortly after this news broke, posting this image of Baker Mayfield dressed as, well, a baker, with a tray of cookies that bake at 704. 704, of course, being the area code for Charlotte, North Carolina. So we have, as I mentioned, Jeff Darlington, Sam Acho, and Mike Tannenbaum here to talk NFL football. Let's start there. Jeff, what was the biggest reason this trade finally happened?
Dan, 3.5 million reasons. And that is what Baker Mayfield ultimately gave up in salary of his 18.8. Now, he can still earn it in incentives, but this is a significant factor here. The fact that the Carolina Panthers were willing to essentially still pay Baker Mayfield a good chunk of this, but also the Cleveland Browns picking up part of that tab. But Baker also giving up the 3.5 is the biggest factor. He essentially, very clearly, could have pushed Cleveland to an even tougher decision. They weren't going to pay him $18.8 million this coming season. They very clearly didn't have much leverage if it required Baker to give up 3.5 to go to Carolina. He could have forced their hand and gotten them to ultimately either come up in the amount of money they took on or cut Baker Mayfield. But Baker said, no, I need to restart my career now. If I want a chance to succeed this season, I've got to do it soon. So ultimately, Baker being the one to force himself out of Cleveland and into a potential starting job.
Yeah, important to remember that 18.8 was fully guaranteed. So if they had cut him, he would have gotten all of that money anyway and been able to sign anywhere else. But he's willing to give up that money to get a shot to play elsewhere outside of Cleveland. So Sam Acho, how well is Baker Mayfield set up for success in his new place in Carolina?
I think Baker Mayfield is set up for extreme success in Carolina. You look at it, last year they had the 29th ranked pass protection. They added 3 offensive linemen. You had Ike Ekwonu, probably the best offensive lineman in the draft. You get Brasley Bozeman from the Baltimore Ravens playing center. Austin Corbett, LA Rams Super Bowl champion offensive line. Add to that a healthy Christian McCaffrey, who in his first 3 years had the most yards from scrimmage out of anyone. And then add to that a healthy Baker Mayfield, like a 2020 Baker Mayfield, not a torn labrum Baker Mayfield. You add that to a solid defense, I think this team is going to go far next season.
Tannenbaum, you agree?
No, I don't. I'm skeptical for a number of reasons. In Baker Mayfield's best season, they threw the ball in 2020 501 times and ran it 496. We all love Christian McCaffrey, a dynamic player, but durability has been a massive issue for him. He's going to need to stay healthy, and I don't see it the same way as Sam does. When we saw those great Saints teams, they were able to keep the pocket firm in terms of 2 great guards and a center. There's a couple question marks, especially at guard with Brady Christensen. So for Baker Mayfield to excel the way he did in 2020, that offensive line is going to have to check some boxes in training camp. Maybe they can. And I just think to understand this offense, knowing that we're in mid-July, it's going to be a work in progress. So I think they have a chance to do well, but I don't see them excelling the way he did in 2020 with the Browns.
Sacho, you look like you had a rebuttal.
Yeah, I did. I mean, so a couple things, Mike T. As far as the offensive line, yes, of course, it's improved. But number one, the Carolina Panthers play in the NFC. The NFC is a weak conference. We all know that. He's probably the second best quarterback right now in his division in the NFC South. And last year, Baker Mayfield played with a torn labrum. So if I'm a Panthers fan, I saw what happened last year. I saw us have 5-12 season last season, 15 wins over the last 3 seasons. That's 5 a year. I'm getting a guy who, when healthy, can lean on an offensive guy like Christian McCaffrey, can lean on a strong offensive line, right? You don't need Baker Mayfield to be excellent or outstanding. You need Baker Mayfield to be Baker Mayfield, not a guy who's trying to play with a torn labrum. And so for me, I like this move. I think this team could actually get into the playoffs in a weak NFC conference.
Darlington, I got to ask, though. I mean, we mentioned Sam Darnold is still there. His money is still guaranteed. Right. I mean, is Baker definitely going to start there? Well, how's it going to work?
Well, not to pour water on this quarterback competition, because I don't want to do that. This will be fun. But we still want to look at what happened in Denver last season. Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, not all that fascinating to a lot of fans, but ultimately pretty much a carbon copy of what is happening now in Carolina. Teddy Bridgewater got traded from Carolina to Denver in an almost identical type of a trade. He landed there and ultimately competed with Drew Lock throughout training camp and won the job. The one thing I want to point out about Baker Mayfield, when I talked to coaches when he was coming out of the draft, Sean McVay, Sean Payton, these offensive minds loved him because of his recall. He has a photographic memory, an ability to pick up a playbook perhaps faster than anybody else in the NFL. So that's going to give him a leg up immediately when it comes to trying to come in there, even behind the 8 ball because Sam Darnold has been there, and ultimately make up a lot of ground. Do not discount that when it comes to Baker Mayfield's ability to come in and win this starting job early on.
Mike T, final word.
Yeah, I've experienced with this. Vinny Testaverde in 98, Brett Favre in 2008, Jay Cutler as an injury replacement for Ryan Tannehill in Miami. When you bring a quarterback in late, it's just not the same. I agree with Jeff. Baker Mayfield is extremely intelligent. He'll know the playbook, but I'm talking about the nuances of route running and some of the subtleties of running a pro offense. It just doesn't happen overnight, and that's why this Panther offense will be a work in progress.
Right around 3 weeks now till the start of training camp. This will be one of the more interesting position battles to watch in camp. Much more with these three guys later in the show. But right now, let's get to the NBA, where it's been exactly 1 week since Kevin Durant requested a trade out of Brooklyn. At the time of the request, it was reported that his preferred destinations were the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. Here we are a week later, and we are still awaiting a resolution on this situation. So we bring in our very knowledgeable basketball crew, Brian Windhorst, Zach Lowe, and Nick Friedel. Wendy, I want to start with you. Where do things stand right now with KD and a potential trade?
Yeah, when the Nets put him on the market, Dan, I think they thought there was going to be a tremendous bidding war. And while there's a lot of interest, from what I can tell, that bidding war isn't really hot right now. The teams have made their offers, and they don't really feel the need to increase them. Now, maybe we'll see a little bit of action coming out of Summer League. All of the executives are gathering in Las Vegas over the next few days, and there could be a restart in action there. But there's been a couple of things that have happened that have even made it more complicated that involve the Utah Jazz. The Jazz make this trade with Rudy Gobert last week, where they get an incredible haul of draft picks, in which the Nets respond by saying, well, now the price for Durant just went higher. And the rest of the league is kind of saying, we don't think so. We don't want to pay that price. We didn't like that trade. And then you look at Donovan Mitchell. After the Gobert trade, there was a belief that maybe Mitchell would be next, and maybe at some point he will be. But for now, the Jazz are telling people they don't intend to trade him. And on Mitchell's side, he's going to stand pat. He's not going to force any action right now. So without Mitchell in the market, the teams are not trying to outbid each other. It doesn't make sense for teams to sell their house to pay for a car, even if that car is a Lamborghini like Kevin Durant.
So Nick, what is your recourse if you're the Nets here with the market frozen?
You just have to hope that it changes. But then this is a problem. To Brian's point, the Nets were hoping, all right, Kevin Durant's available.